They tell you the silence is the hardest part. That's the first thing they mention when you sign up for a job like this. Can you handle the solitude, son? They ask, looking at you over the rim of a coffee mug. I told them I could. I told them the silence was exactly what I was looking for. I was lying, of course. What I was looking for was an escape. My name is Alex. Before I came here, I was an EMT in the city. For 6 years, my life was a symphony of sirens, screaming, and the smell of sterile antiseptic trying and failing to cover the scent of blood. I saw things you don't talk about at dinner parties. The kind of things that replay in your head at 3 a.m. One day, after a particularly bad call involving a multi-car pileup on the interstate, I just stopped. I walked into my supervisor's office, placed my badge on his desk, and walked out. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to go somewhere quiet. Somewhere the ghosts of the city couldn't follow me. That's how I found this job. Fire lookout, Redwood National Park, Sector Gamma 7. 6 months, perched 100 feet in the air in a glass and wood box watching over 1 million acres of ancient trees. The pay wasn't great, but it didn't matter. The job description was one word: watch. I thought I could handle that. The man I replaced was named Silas. He was old, with a face like a road map of every back road in the state, and a beard that looked like it had birds nesting in it. He met me at the base of the tower. He handed me a heavy ring of iron keys and looked me up and down. His eyes were a pale, washed-out blue, like the sky on a hazy day. "It's not the fires you gotta worry about," he said, his voice a dry rasp, like leaves skittering on pavement. "It's the fog." He clapped me on the shoulder, his hand surprisingly heavy. "The Conservancy pays well for a reason, kid. They know you ain't just watching for smoke." He didn't explain further. He just spat on the ground, got in his rusted-out pickup truck, and drove away without looking back. The tower is something else. It's a 14 by 14-foot room on stilts, with windows on all 4 sides. Inside, there's a small bed, a wood-burning stove, a desk with a radio, and the Osborne fire finder. A big brass circle used to pinpoint the location of smoke. It's cozy, in a terrifying, isolated sort of way. You're the only human for 50 miles in any direction. You're a lonely king on a wooden throne, ruling over an empire of trees. It was on the desk, tucked under the logbook, that I found it. A single sheet of paper, laminated and stained with coffee rings. The title was written in block letters with a fading black marker. "Things Silas Learned the Hard Way." It was a list of rules.
Rule 1. The raven's name is Corbin. Trust him more than you trust your eyes. I thought it was a joke, until a massive raven landed on my railing the next morning. He wasn't like other birds. He was huge, with feathers so black they seemed to drink the light. And his eyes, they were intelligent. He didn't caw or squawk, he just watched me. The rules said to leave a piece of jerky on the railing every morning. When I did, he'd hop over, pick it up, and sometimes he'd leave something in its place. The first gift was a small, smooth river stone with a perfect hole in the center. The second was a single silver cufflink, tarnished with age. The rule also said, if he taps 3 times on the western window, a storm is coming. If he taps on the southern window, go inside, lock the door, and don't look outside until morning. Rule 2. Between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., do not respond to any voice that calls your name from the forest floor. This happened my first week. I was reading by the light of a lantern when I heard it. "Alex?" It sounded like a woman's voice, soft, worried. It sounded like my mother. "Alex, are you up there? I'm lost!" My heart hammered against my ribs. My mom lives in Arizona, there was no way. But the voice, it was perfect. I almost went to the window. I almost called back. Then Corbin, who had been sleeping on a rafter, let out a single harsh caw. It snapped me out of it. I remembered the rule. The voice called out a few more times, each time sounding more desperate, more real. Then it changed. The soft, worried tone dissolved into a dry, hateful whisper that scraped against the silence. It wasn't human. It never was.
Rule 3. The fog is not empty. Silas was right about the fog. It rolls in from the coast without warning, a thick, white wall that swallows the entire forest. You can't see the ground. You can't see the trees. You're floating in a sea of white. The rule says that when the fog is at its thickest, you will sometimes see things moving within it. Shadows. Tall, impossibly thin figures walking between the trees on limbs that bend the wrong way. The rule calls them the weavers because they seem to tend to the fog, guiding it. You are to log their appearance in the logbook. Note the direction they are moving, but never shine your light on them. They dislike being seen, and you don't want their attention. Rule 4. The old phonograph is for emergencies only. In the corner, there's a dusty old wind-up phonograph with a single cracked vinyl record on it. The label on the record is just a hand-drawn spiral. The rule is simple. If you feel a deep, unnatural cold seep into the room and the wood of the stove begins to frost over, play the record. Play it loud. Do not stop it until the frost recedes. I haven't had to use it yet. I pray I never do. Sometimes I can hear a very faint, discordant melody coming from it, even when it's not playing.
For 2 months, this was my life. A quiet, terrifying routine. I'd wake up, feed Corbin, check the weather, watch the trees, and read the rules. I saw the weavers twice, moving like ink dropped in milk through the fog. I heard the voice that mimics my mother 3 more times. I learned to ignore it. I learned to watch. I learned to listen to the raven. The ghosts of the city were gone, replaced by the very real monsters of the forest. In a strange way, it was peaceful. The fear was honest. Then came the call about the little girl. It was a sunny afternoon. No fog, no whispers. The radio crackled to life with a real call, not a phantom one. A 9-year-old girl named Lily wandered off from her family's campsite. Eagle's Peak was in my sector. My job was to be the eye in the sky. I scanned the vast green expanse with my binoculars, my heart a cold knot in my stomach. Hours passed. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood. The search party had to pull back for the night. Standard procedure. The forest isn't safe for them after dark.
But Lily was still out there, alone. As darkness fell, a new kind of silence descended. A heavy, waiting silence. And then, at 9 p.m., the radio crackled again. It wasn't the ranger station. It was her. It was Lily's voice. "Please, I can see a light up high. Can you help me?" I froze. It couldn't be her. The family didn't have a radio. It was the creature, the mimic. But it had never used a victim's voice before. It was learning, adapting. I wanted to scream, to tell it to leave her alone. But I knew that would only confirm I was listening. That's when Corbin started tapping on the window, the southern window. Tap, tap, tap. The rule was clear. Lock the door. Don't look outside. But then he did something else. He took flight, circled the tower once, and flew south, directly towards Eagle's Peak.
My blood ran cold. It was a choice. Stay safe in the tower and let a little girl die, or break the rules. Break the one rule that was probably keeping me alive. I looked at the final rule on Silas's list. I hadn't paid it much attention before. Rule 5. When you ever have to leave the tower at night, don't come back empty-handed. It says, the forest takes a toll for every trespass. If you take something from the night, you must leave something of yourself in its place. A memory, a secret, something that hurts to give away. Whisper it to the oldest tree you can find on your way back. Otherwise, the door to the tower won't be where you left it. I didn't hesitate, but I wasn't going out there blind. I looked at the phonograph in the corner, its brass horn gleaming dully in the lantern light. The rules said it was for the cold, but what was this mimic, if not a different kind of cold? A cold that crept into your heart through your ears. It was a risk, using a tool without knowing all its properties. But staying here was the bigger risk. I walked over, wound the crank, and gently lowered the needle onto the record.
A strange, dissonant melody filled the small room. It wasn't music, not really. It was like the memory of a song, played on a piano that was slightly out of tune. I grabbed my heavy flashlight, a flare, and the small climbing axe I kept by the door. With the phantom music playing behind me, I descended the 100 stairs into the darkness, the wind whipping around me. For the first time in 2 months, my feet touched the forest floor after sunset. The world went completely silent, save for the ghostly tune drifting down from the tower. The forest at night is a different beast. The giant redwoods weren't trees anymore. They were pillars of a cathedral dedicated to an old, hungry god. Every snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot. I followed the direction Corbin had flown, my flashlight beam cutting a nervous path through the oppressive dark. After an hour of hiking, guided by the raven's occasional distant caw, I found her. Lily was standing in a small clearing, her back to me. She wasn't crying, she was just staring at a tree. But it wasn't a tree. It was tall and thin, like a birch, but its bark was the color of old bone, and it seemed to shift and writhe in my flashlight beam. And from the tree, Lily's voice was whispering back to her. It was telling her how warm it was inside, how safe, how her parents were waiting for her just inside the bark.
This was the mimic. Not just a voice, it was a lure. I didn't call out her name. The creature would just use it against me. I took out the flare, pulled the cap, and struck it. The clearing was flooded with a harsh chemical red light. The creature shrieked. The illusion shattered. The tree wasn't a tree. It was a writhing mass of pale, spindly limbs, all connected to a central point where a wide, gaping mouth opened, lined with countless human teeth. The shriek wasn't one voice, but 1,000 stolen voices screaming at once. Children crying, men begging, women whispering, an orchestra of despair. It recoiled from the light, melting back into the shadows. I ran, scooped Lily into my arms. She was light as a doll, and I didn't stop running until my lungs burned and the red light of the flare died out. We found the main trail by dawn. The search party found us an hour later. Lily was cold and scared, but unharmed. The head ranger, a man with eyes as old as the trees, looked at my flare, then at me. He just nodded slowly and said, "Cougars in this sector are getting real strange these days. Glad you had that flare." He knew. On the long walk back to my tower, I found the oldest redwood I could, a gnarled giant whose base was wider than my truck. I pressed my hand against its rough bark, closed my eyes, and I left my toll. I whispered the memory of the last time I saw my patient alive on that interstate, the one that made me quit. The secret I had never told anyone. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that had been there for years. When I got back to the tower, the strange music from the phonograph had stopped. The door was unlocked. It was right where I left it. Epilogue. I finished my 6-month contract. Then I signed on for another, and another after that. This is my home now. The silence I was running to turned out to be full of voices, but they're voices I'm starting to understand. The ghosts of the city can't find me up here. Corbin still brings me gifts. Last week, it was a child's worn leather shoe. I didn't ask where he got it. I just added it to the collection. The weavers still dance in the fog, and the mimic still tries to call me down from the trees, but its voice is weaker now. It knows I'm watching. I added a new rule to Silas's list, right at the bottom, using his old pen. Rule 6. Some nights, you are the only light in the darkness. Act like it.